December 7th, 1941. Pearl Harbor is quiet. It's a Sunday morning. Sailors are sleeping in. Officers are at breakfast. 7 battleships sit moored along Battleship Row in a neat, parallel line. 230 miles north, Commander Mitsuo Fuchida is leading 183 aircraft across open ocean in radio silence, flying low to stay off radar. In this version of history, there's something else anchored at the harbor entrance. An Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer, 9,200 tons of radar, computers, and precision weapons. Its Spy 1 radar is already scanning. More than 300 sailors are at their stations. In the next 90 minutes, that destroyer fires nearly 70 missiles, shoots down more than 60 Japanese aircraft, and saves the Pacific Fleet. And then the clock starts running on a completely different problem. Because here's what nobody asks when they imagine a modern warship dropped into Pearl Harbor. What happens when the destroyer's gas turbines need fuel that won't be invented until 1952? What happens when the radar cooling system begins to fail and there isn't a single replacement part in the entire United States in December 1941? What happens when Japan's best admiral gets a reconnaissance photograph of an unknown ship and starts asking exactly the right questions about it? The destroyer wins the battle in 90 minutes. The question is what it loses in the 30 days that follow, and whether Japan figures out the answer before the crew does. Before anything else, you need to understand exactly what the Arleigh Burke brings to December 1941, because every specification here has a time limit attached to it. The ship is 505 feet long and displaces 9,200 tons fully loaded. 4 General Electric LM2500 gas turbines drive it to 30 knots. More than 300 sailors operate it. At its center is the Aegis combat system, a network of radar, computers, and weapons that tracks incoming threats and generates firing solutions faster than any human operator could react. The Spy 1 radar array, built into the ship's superstructure, scans the full surrounding airspace multiple times per second. It can track more than 100 targets simultaneously, sort them by altitude and speed, and begin calculating intercept solutions before a human officer has finished reading the first contact report. Against Japanese aircraft flying at 200 miles per hour, with no radar warning systems, no electronic countermeasures, and no understanding that anything like this could exist, Aegis is working so far below its design parameters that the engagement barely qualifies as a test. The ship's main battery, 96 vertical launch cells, roughly 40 carry SM-2 or SM-6 surface-to-air missiles, with reach out to 90 nautical miles. Another 16 cells hold short-range ESSM missiles for closer threats. Additional cells carry Tomahawk cruise missiles for land or surface targets. On deck, a 5-inch gun for visual range work. At the waterline, a single phalanx CIWS, 1,550 rounds of 20mm tungsten at 4,500 rounds per minute for anything that survives everything else. Now here's the only number that matters above all the others. 96 cells. That's everything. No factory in 1941 Hawaii can manufacture an SM-2 missile. No supply chain on Earth can replicate the guidance components inside them. Once those cells fire, they stay empty, and 353 Japanese aircraft are already airborne. The math is simple. The outcome of the next 90 minutes is not in doubt. What starts the moment those 90 minutes end is the story nobody's told yet. The SPY-1 picks up the first wave at 7:15 a.m., 80 miles out over open water. At that distance, an SM-6 has more than enough flight time to intercept before the aircraft reach Oahu. Aegis calculates. The captain authorizes weapons free. The first salvo launches at 7:22. From Commander Fuchida's position leading the first wave, it begins without explanation. Aircraft ahead of him disappear from formation. No tracers, no enemy fighters, no visible fire from below. Planes stop transmitting and fall out of the sky, and nobody in the formation can say why. The tight formation discipline that made the attack so effective against 1941 anti-aircraft batteries becomes a liability here. Radar-guided weapons prefer predictable targets flying straight and level. The torpedo bombers descending toward Battleship Row are engaged before they reach the harbor mouth. The level bombers at altitude, flying steady and straight for their bombing runs. Exactly the approach geometry that made them nearly immune to conventional anti-aircraft fire, are precisely what a radar-guided missile is built for. By 8:06 a.m., the minute the Arizona's forward magazine would have detonated in the real history of that morning, Battleship Row is intact. The 1,177 men in the Arizona's forward sections are alive. The ship has fired roughly 38 missiles. Somewhere between 25 and 30 Japanese aircraft are down. The second wave arrives at 8:54 a.m. Another 170 aircraft, mostly dive bombers and level bombers, expecting an undefended harbor. The Spy-1 picks them up 60 miles out. The remaining SM-2s launch. By 9:45 a.m., the last Japanese aircraft turns north. Japan has lost somewhere between 60 and 70 aircraft across both waves, against their historical loss of 29. The Pacific Fleet is largely intact. A handful of aircraft broke through the engagement envelope and caused scattered damage to airfield infrastructure, but Battleship Row is standing. On the decks of ships that should be on the harbor bottom, sailors watch the destroyer in silence. Inside, the captain is reading the post-battle status screen. Approximately 68 missiles expended, 28 VLS cells still loaded. Phalanx fired roughly 400 rounds, 1,150 remaining. 5-inch magazine at 80%. Looking at those numbers, the crew has every reason to feel the battle went well. 28 cells, enough for another serious engagement. The ship is intact, the fleet is alive, and the Japanese air groups are shattered. What the status screen doesn't show is what's happening in the engine room. And that's where the next 30 days actually begin. December 8th. Congress is declaring war. Admirals are walking the dock, studying a warship that doesn't appear in any recognition manual they've ever opened. The ammunition count looks acceptable. 28 loaded cells represents real fighting capacity against anything Japan could realistically mount in the immediate aftermath. Harbor Command is focused on the missile inventory. The engineering officer is focused on something harder to explain. The Arleigh Burke runs on JP-5. That's a kerosene-based jet fuel developed specifically for naval gas turbines and carrier aviation. The U.S. Navy doesn't standardize it until 1952. Pearl Harbor, in December 1941, has bunker fuel oil for its battleships, aviation gasoline for its aircraft, and diesel for its small craft. The LM-2500 gas turbines that drove this ship at 30 knots will accept none of these. The engineering officer spends 45 minutes explaining this to a 1941 Navy captain who has spent his career around steam boilers and reciprocating diesel engines. The explanation involves diagrams. At the end of it, the captain asks, with genuine composure, whether they've checked again. They have. The destroyer arrived in Pearl Harbor, carrying approximately 380,000 gallons of JP-5. The battle burned fuel at sustained high power rates, combat maneuvering, full radar and weapons operation, peak electrical load from the Aegis systems running continuously for 90 minutes. The tanks are now at 65%, roughly 247,000 gallons remaining. At normal cruising speed, that's about 8 days of range. The harbor engineers will spend the next several days searching every fuel tank on the island for anything the LM-2500 can safely burn. The answer they come back with will take some time to arrive, and it won't be what the engineering crew is hoping for. The search for a workaround is serious because the alternative is a stationary ship. Aviation gasoline burns too hot and too fast for a marine gas turbine. Running an LM-2500 on avgas risks compressor blade erosion and combustion instability, the kind of failure that, in December 1941, means permanent failure, because no one on Oahu can manufacture a replacement. Standard marine diesel is the closer option chemically, but it carries a different flash point, different viscosity, and different combustion characteristics. Running it through a turbine designed for jet fuel is a survivable emergency measure, until it isn't. The engineering crew begins testing a diesel blend on 2 turbines starting December 12th, 5 days after the attack. The engines run, but they run rough, and the vibration data coming back from the compressor stages is uncomfortable enough that the chief engineer is careful about how much he puts in writing. The ship can move. Maximum sustained speed on the diesel blend, 14 knots, roughly half of combat capability. The other 2 turbines remain offline for precautionary inspection. Meanwhile, in Tokyo, the pilot reports from December 7th have arrived, and they're being read with the kind of attention that follows any catastrophe. Something in Pearl Harbor destroyed 60 Japanese aircraft without the defending fleet firing a visible shot. No known American warship matches the description. No known American weapon system operates at those engagement ranges with that volume of fire. Yamamoto has 6 fleet carriers, their full air groups, and an intelligence division that has just received the most confusing assignment of the war. By December 14th, the destroyer has 247,000 gallons of JP-5 remaining, 2 turbines running on improvised fuel, and 2 more sitting offline. Japan is asking questions about Pearl Harbor that are going to take time to answer. Some answers, though, can be found faster than others. The SPY-1 radar requires cooling. The phased array antenna that tracked 353 aircraft on December 7th runs at high internal temperatures and depends on a closed-loop liquid cooling circuit to stay within operational parameters. That circuit uses a specific coolant with corrosion inhibitors calibrated to the radar's components. By December 17th, 10 days after the battle, the coolant level has dropped 11%. Minor seal degradation, the kind of maintenance item that gets logged and addressed within 48 hours when there's a naval support infrastructure behind the ship. There is no such infrastructure here, and the seals that need replacing don't exist anywhere in 1941. The coolant drop doesn't take the SPY-1 offline. What it does is slow the radar's scan refresh rate enough to affect precision tracking of fast-moving, low-altitude targets. The system that made December 7th possible is no longer performing at December 7th specifications. It's narrowing, day by day, without any means of repair. On December 20th, one of the 2 offline turbines throws a vibration alarm, severe enough that engineering takes it fully out of service. The ship now has 2 operational engines, running on a diesel blend that may already be causing compressor wear nobody can quantify without equipment that doesn't exist in 1941. Maximum speed, 11 knots. The 28 VLS cells are still loaded. On paper, real firepower. In practice, the radar calculating the firing solutions for those missiles is degrading, and the ship that needs to maneuver into optimal engagement positions can no longer do it at anything close to combat speed. On December 22nd, a Japanese long-range reconnaissance aircraft photographs Pearl Harbor from high altitude. Among the surviving American fleet, one hull matches nothing in Japanese naval recognition files. The image reaches Tokyo 6 days later. Yamamoto looks at the photograph for a long time. His intelligence staff has assembled everything the December 7th pilots could describe about the unknown ship. Automated fire without visible crew rotation, engagement from ranges beyond visual contact, no pause between targets. One staff officer writes in his summary that the weapons system described functions in ways that exceed current engineering understanding. Then Yamamoto asks a question nobody expected. He asks what fuel a ship with that propulsion configuration would require, and whether Pearl Harbor's existing tank farms would carry it in quantity. The answer arrives within a week, and it changes everything about what Japan decides to do next. The intelligence assessment that reaches Yamamoto in early January 1942 is, by naval intelligence standards, unusually precise on one point. The hull configuration of the unknown destroyer corresponds to a gas turbine propulsion system. Gas turbines require jet-grade fuel, a kerosene derivative fundamentally different from the standard heavy fuel oil that Pearl Harbor's tank farms carry in large quantities. Japanese naval intelligence, drawing on pre-war infrastructure data, determines that Pearl Harbor almost certainly holds very limited stocks of any jet-grade fuel. The ship that destroyed 60 Japanese aircraft in December cannot be resupplied with what it needs to keep running at full capacity. Yamamoto does not order a second strike. The reasoning is military. A second strike against Pearl Harbor in January 1942 carries real cost. The American fleet survived December 7th. Anti-aircraft defenses are fully manned and alert, and the unknown ship still has 28 loaded cells. Yamamoto calculates that an attack strong enough to defeat that remaining capacity would cost Japan more aircraft than a ship already degrading on its own is worth. He decides to wait. He is correct. By the end of January 1942, the destroyer's engineering log records 3 turbine inspections with inconclusive findings, a radar coolant level at 74% of operating standard, and a maximum sustained speed of 9 knots. The 28 VLS cells are still loaded. The 5-inch deck gun works perfectly because 1941 American 5-inch ammunition is compatible and plentiful. The Phalanx has 1,150 rounds. What the ship has become, operationally, is a well-armed platform with a failing sensor suite and a propulsion system that may not survive the next significant mechanical demand placed on it. Against the scale of strike Japan could still theoretically mount, the outcome would no longer look like December 7th. Yamamoto waited. The waiting was enough. Now, step back from the ship and look at what December 1941 produced in this altered timeline. The Pacific Fleet is intact. 8 battleships that historically spent months on the harbor bottom are operational. Casualties number in the hundreds instead of the thousands. The Navy that enters 1942 is materially stronger and psychologically different from the one that fought from the wreckage of Battleship Row. The war doesn't end. Japan still controls Southeast Asia, still has its army and its remaining carrier force, still holds positions across the Pacific that take years to dislodge. But the American military machine that has to fight across those years isn't starting from a deficit. What the destroyer also left behind was documentation. The reports that 1941 naval engineers produced trying to understand the Spy 1, the LM-2500 turbines, the vertical launch system, none of it was immediately buildable. The technology gap between Aegis and 1941 American manufacturing was too wide to bridge in wartime, but the concept now existed as operational fact in American naval files, not as theoretical design. The officers who would eventually shape the post-war American Navy had watched it work from the decks of ships that didn't sink. Modern technology doesn't remove wars from the calendar. It changes what the days on that calendar cost. One ship, in one harbor, on one morning in December, changed what the Pacific War cost. Its turbines eventually ran dry, its radar narrowed, and Yamamoto correctly identified it as a problem that would solve itself. But the fleet it saved on December 7th didn't need the destroyer to keep fighting indefinitely. It needed to survive long enough to fight the war on its own terms. That, in the end, was exactly what the clock was counting down to. And what happens when Japan decides that next time it won't send aircraft at all, but submarines? That's the next video.